The judge does not look at her when he speaks. He looks at his papers, at his gavel, at the wood grain of his bench, at anything and everything except the 15-year-old girl standing in the witness box with her hands clasped in front of her and her chin held high. He says, "Miss Williams, I find your account difficult to believe." He says it the way someone might comment on the weather, casual, dismissive, already moving on to the next thing. The courtroom is silent. 47 people sit in the gallery, and not one of them makes a sound. The defense attorney smirks. The prosecutor stares at her notes. The defendant, a man named Harrison Whitfield III, adjusts his tie and allows himself the smallest smile, the smile of someone who has already won. The judge continues. He says, "You are asking this court to believe that a girl of your age, from your background, with your limited resources, somehow has information that contradicts the testimony of multiple credentialed witnesses." He pauses. He still does not look at her. He says, "I am inclined to dismiss your testimony as unreliable." The girl in the witness box does not flinch. Her name is Amara Williams, and she is 15 years old, and she has been standing in front of people who refuse to see her for her entire life. She has learned that flinching is a luxury she cannot afford. She has learned that the moment you show weakness is the moment they decide they were right about you all along. She says, "Your Honor." Her voice is steady, clear. It carries to every corner of the courtroom without rising above a conversational tone. She says, "I have evidence." The judge sighs. It is a theatrical sigh, the sigh of a man who is being tremendously inconvenienced by someone he considers beneath his attention. He says, "Miss Williams, we have been through the evidence. Your testimony does not align with the facts as established by this court." Amara says, "You have not seen all the evidence." The judge's hand moves toward his gavel. He is going to dismiss her. He is going to send her away, back to the gallery, back to the margins where he believes she belongs. He is going to let Harrison Whitfield III walk free, and he is going to do it without ever once looking at the girl who knows the truth. Amara reaches into the folder she has been holding. She pulls out a sheaf of papers, thick, dense with text and photographs and timestamps. She says, "I have documentation, Your Honor. I have recordings, and I have proof that contradicts everything the defense has claimed." The courtroom stirs. The defense attorney is on his feet. The prosecutor looks up from her notes for the first time. Harrison Whitfield. The third's smile freezes, then fades, then disappears entirely. The judge finally looks at her. His eyes narrow. He says, "What is this?" Amara Williams holds out the papers. She says, "This is the truth." And for the first time since she walked into this courtroom, someone is listening. 37 days earlier, Amara Williams sits on the front porch of her grandmother's house and watches the sun set over the neighborhood she has called home for her entire life. Carver Heights is not the kind of place that makes it onto postcards. The houses are small. The lawns are patchy. The streets have potholes that the city has been promising to fix for as long as anyone can remember. But the people here know each other. They wave when they pass. They bring casseroles when someone is sick and flowers when someone dies. They hold block parties in the summer and shovel each other's driveways in the winter, and they understand that community is not something you have, but something you build. Amara's grandmother, Rosetta Williams, is 73 years old and has lived in Carver Heights for 51 of those years. She bought her house in 1973, the same year she married Amara's grandfather, the same year she started working as a nurse at St. Michael's Hospital downtown. She raised 3 children in this house. She buried her husband in the backyard cemetery of the Baptist church on the corner. She watched the neighborhood change and struggle and survive. And she stayed through all of it because this is her home. Because home is not something you leave when things get hard. Now, someone wants to take it from her. The letter arrived 3 weeks ago. It came from a company called Whitfield Development Corporation, and it informed Rosetta Williams that her property had been identified for acquisition as part of an urban renewal initiative. The letter used words like revitalization and community improvement and economic opportunity. It offered her $120,000 for a house that has been appraised at $350,000. It gave her 30 days to respond. Rosetta Williams did not respond. She threw the letter in the trash and went back to tending her garden. And she told her granddaughter not to worry, that she had dealt with worse than corporate vultures in fancy suits, that this house had stood for 51 years and would stand for 51 more. But Amara worried. Amara is 15 years old, and she has her grandmother's stubbornness and her father's analytical mind, and her mother's refusal to accept injustice without a fight. Her father is a data analyst for a logistics company. Her mother is a paralegal at a civil rights law firm. Both of them work long hours for modest pay, and both of them raised their daughter to question everything, to document everything, to understand that in a world that does not want to see you, the only defense is evidence too clear to be denied. Amara started researching. She started digging. She started pulling threads that no one expected a 15-year-old girl to find. The Whitfield Development Corporation is not what it appears to be. This is the first thing Amara discovers. On the surface, it looks legitimate. It has a website with stock photos of smiling families and renovated buildings. It has a mission statement about creating vibrant communities and providing affordable housing. It has a CEO named Harrison Whitfield III, a man with silver hair and a confident smile, who appears in photographs shaking hands with mayors and governors and senators. But underneath the surface, the company is something else entirely. Amara finds the lawsuits first. There are 17 of them, filed in courts across 4 states over the past decade. They all tell similar stories. A Whitfield Development Corporation identifies a neighborhood with modest homes and limited political power. It sends letters offering to buy properties at below-market prices. When residents refuse to sell, strange things begin to happen. Building code violations appear from nowhere. Property taxes increase unexpectedly. Permits for routine repairs are denied. Residents receive visits from people who suggest, politely but firmly, that selling would be in their best interest. And when all of that fails, the lawsuits begin. Eminent domain claims, accusations of property code violations, legal actions that drag on for months or years, bleeding residents dry until they have no choice but to sell at whatever price they can get. As Amara reads about an 80-year-old man in Birmingham who lost his home of 40 years after Whitfield Development claimed his property was a public safety hazard. She reads about a community in Houston where 37 families were displaced after a city council member with ties to Harrison Whitfield III pushed through a rezoning measure. She reads about a neighborhood in Atlanta where property values dropped 70% in 18 months after Whitfield Development began acquiring homes, making it impossible for remaining residents to sell at anything close to fair market value. The pattern is clear. The predator is consistent. And Carver Heights is next on the list. Amara prints everything. She creates folders organized by date and location and type of documentation. She builds a timeline that shows how Whitfield Development has operated over the past 10 years. A timeline that reveals a systematic campaign to acquire low-income neighborhoods, displace residents, and replace working-class communities with luxury developments that original residents could never afford. She shows her parents. Her father stares at the documentation with his mouth open. Her mother gets very quiet, the kind of quiet that means she is thinking about legal strategies and evidentiary standards and how to turn information into action. Her father says, "How did you find all of this?" Amara says, "I looked. Nobody else was looking, so I did." Her mother says, "This is not enough. This shows a pattern, but it does not prove what they are doing here in Carver Heights." Amara nods. She knows this. She has been thinking about this for days, about the gap between knowing something is wrong and proving it. She says, "I need to find the local connection. I need to find proof that what they did in Birmingham and Houston and Atlanta, they are doing here." Her mother looks at her for a long moment. Then she nods. She says, "Be careful. These are dangerous people." Amara says, "I know." She does not say that she is 15 years old and afraid. She does not say that the weight of what she is discovering sometimes wakes her in the night, heart pounding, wondering if she is in over her head. She does not say any of this because she has learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else matters more. She goes back to work. The evidence comes from an unlikely source. His name is Derek Simmons, and he is 64 years old, and he has lived in Carver Heights for 40 years. And 3 weeks ago, he received the same letter Rosetta Williams received, offering to buy his home for half its value. But Derek Simmons is not just a long-time resident. Derek Simmons was, until 18 months ago, a city inspector for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. He was fired after 31 years of service for what the official record calls performance issues. The unofficial record, which Amara pieces together from old newspaper articles and court filings, tells a different story. Derek Simmons was fired because he refused to sign off on building code violations that he believed were fabricated. He was fired because he documented a meeting in which a supervisor instructed inspectors to target specific neighborhoods for increased scrutiny. He was fired because he knew too much about what was really happening and would not stay quiet about it. Amara finds Derek Simmons on a Tuesday afternoon, sitting on his porch with a glass of lemonade and a newspaper that he is not really reading. She approaches slowly, respectfully, the way her grandmother taught her to approach elders. She says, "Mr. Simmons, I am Rosetta Williams's granddaughter. I was hoping I could talk to you about what happened with the city." Derek Simmons looks at her for a long moment. His eyes are tired but sharp, the eyes of a man who has seen too much and been silenced for too long. He says, "You are young, too young to be mixed up in this." Amara says, "Someone has to do something." He nods slowly. He says, "That is what I thought too. Look where it got me." Amara does not back down. She says, "I have been researching Whitfield development. I know what they did in Birmingham and Houston and Atlanta. I know there is a pattern. And I think you know something about how it works here." Derek Simmons is quiet for a long time. The afternoon light shifts. A car drives past. Somewhere down the street, children are playing, their laughter carrying on the warm air. He says finally, "You should not be doing this. These are powerful people. They have money and lawyers and connections in places you cannot even imagine. They have ruined lives. They have destroyed communities. They do not care who gets hurt." Amara says, "I know." He says, "If I talk to you, if I give you what I have, there is no going back. They will come after your grandmother. They will come after your family. They will come after you." Amara thinks about her grandmother's house. the house where she learned to walk, where she learned to read, where she sat on the porch swing and listened to stories about ancestors who survived things that should have been unsurvivable. She thinks about the neighborhood, about the block parties and the casseroles, and the community that is held together through decades of neglect and disinvestment. She thinks about what will happen if Whitfield Development wins, if the families who have built lives here are scattered to the winds, if the homes that held generations of memories are bulldozed to make room for condominiums that nobody from Carver Heights could ever afford. She says, "I am not backing down." Derek Simmons looks at her, and something in his expression shifts. He says, "You remind me of your grandmother." He stands. He goes inside his house. He comes back with a folder, thick with papers, worn from handling. He hands it to her. He says, "Recordings, emails, internal memos. Everything I saved before they could destroy it." He pauses. He says, "There is a meeting documented in there, a meeting between Harrison Whitfield III and a city council member named Robert Patterson. They discussed specific properties in Carver Heights. They discussed how to create pressure on residents who refused to sell. They discussed things that I believe constitute criminal conspiracy." Amara takes the folder. It is heavy in her hands. It feels like the weight of truth, the weight of justice, the weight of everything she has been fighting for. She says, "Why did you not take this to the authorities before?" Derek Simmons laughs. It is a bitter sound. He says, "Who do you think the authorities are?" Robert Patterson sits on the city council. He has connections to the police chief, to the DA's office, to everyone who matters. I tried to report what I knew. I was fired within a week. I tried to file a lawsuit. It was dismissed before it ever saw a courtroom. These people do not just have power. They have control." Amara looks at the folder in her hands. She thinks about what her mother said, about the gap between knowing something is wrong and proving it. She thinks about courts and judges and the machinery of justice that is supposed to be blind, but so often sees exactly what it chooses to see. She says, "There has to be a way." Derek Simmons shakes his head. He says, "Maybe, but it would take more than evidence. It would take someone who cannot be ignored, someone they have not already bought or silenced, someone who has nothing to lose and everything to gain by telling the truth." Amara Williams is 15 years old. She has never been in a courtroom. She has never testified in front of a judge. She has never faced down wealthy and powerful people who will do anything to protect their interests. But she has her grandmother's stubbornness. She has her father's analytical mind. She has her mother's refusal to accept injustice. And she has evidence that no one has ever seen before. She says, "Thank you, Mr. Simmons." She says, "I am going to make this matter." The lawsuit comes 2 weeks later. It is filed by Whitfield Development Corporation against Rosetta Williams, claiming that her property is in violation of multiple building codes and represents a public safety hazard. The lawsuit demands that she either bring the property into compliance within 60 days or forfeit it to the city for remediation. The violations cited are fabricated. Amara knows this because she has been over every inch of her grandmother's house. She knows this because her father is an analyst who understands documentation, and her mother is a paralegal who understands legal procedure. And together they have documented every room, every system, every inch of the property. The violations claim that the electrical system is dangerously outdated. It was replaced 4 years ago by a licensed electrician, and Amara has the receipts and the inspection certificates. The violations claim that the foundation is structurally unsound. Then an independent engineer examined it 3 months ago and certified it in excellent condition, and Amara has his report. The violations claim that the property is infested with pests. The pest control company that services the house quarterly has never found evidence of infestation, and Amara has their records going back 12 years. Every violation is a lie. Every accusation is manufactured. And the city inspector who signed off on the report, who swore under penalty of perjury that these conditions existed, is the same inspector who replaced Derek Simmons when Derek Simmons was fired for refusing to lie. Rosetta Williams receives the lawsuit on a Friday evening. She sits at her kitchen table and reads it while Amara watches, and her hands do not shake, and her voice does not waver, and she says, "They think they can scare me." She says, "They do not know who they are dealing with." The hearing is scheduled for 3 weeks out. Rosetta could hire a lawyer. There are lawyers who would take the case. Civil rights lawyers who specialize in housing discrimination. Advocates who have fought similar battles in other cities. But lawyers cost money, and the most effective lawyers are often already stretched thin, and the legal system is designed to favor those who can afford to wait. Amara's mother helps prepare the case. She works nights after her day job ends, reviewing documents and researching precedents and building the framework for a defense. Amara's father creates spreadsheets and timelines and visual aids that can help explain complex information to people who are not analysts. And Amara herself takes on the hardest task. She takes the evidence that Derek Simmons gave her, and she builds it into something undeniable. The recordings are the key. There are 6 of them, each one captured on Derek Simmons's phone during meetings he attended in his capacity as a city inspector. The audio quality is not perfect. The voices are sometimes muffled, sometimes overlapping. But Amara has listened to them dozens of times, and she has transcribed every word, and she has matched the voices to known recordings of Harrison Whitfield III and Robert Patterson. In one recording, Harrison Whitfield III discusses specific properties in Carver Heights. He names homeowners by name. He discusses how long they have lived in their homes, how much equity they have built, how attached they are to their properties. He discusses these things the way a predator discusses prey, assessing vulnerabilities, identifying weaknesses, and planning attacks. In another recording, Robert Patterson explains how the inspection process can be weaponized. He describes how violations can be created on paper even when they do not exist in reality. He describes how the appeals process can be drawn out indefinitely, draining residents of resources and hope. He describes how judges can be influenced, how cases can be assigned to courtrooms where the outcomes are predetermined. Amara listens to these recordings, and she feels something cold settle in her chest. It is not fear, exactly. It is the recognition that the system she has been taught to believe in, the system of laws and courts and justice, is not what she thought it was. It is a machine, and the machine can be operated by whoever has the power to control it. But machines can be broken. Machines can be exposed. And Amara Williams has the evidence to do it. The day of the hearing arrives gray and heavy, the sky pressing down on the city like a judgment. Amara wears her best dress, the one her mother bought her for her middle school graduation, and she carries the folder with all of her evidence, and she walks into the courthouse with her grandmother on one side and her parents on the other. The security guard looks at them as they pass through the metal detector. He does not say anything, but Amara can see what he is thinking. She has learned to read these expressions, the slight narrowing of eyes, the almost imperceptible tightening of the mouth. She is used to being assessed and found wanting. The courtroom is smaller than she expected. It is not the grand chamber she has seen in movies, with soaring ceilings and dramatic lighting. It is a functional space, fluorescent lights and wood-paneled walls and rows of chairs that have been sat in by thousands of people seeking justice. Most of them, Amara knows, did not find it. The judge enters. His name is William Hartley, and he is 61 years old, and he has served on the bench for 23 years. Amara has researched him. She knows that he graduated from an Ivy League law school, that he worked in corporate law before being appointed to the bench, that he has donated to the political campaigns of several city council members, including Robert Patterson. She knows that the odds are already stacked against them. The hearing begins. The lawyer for Whitfield Development speaks first. He is smooth and polished, his suit perfectly tailored, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who expects to win. He presents the violations as established fact. He describes Rosetta Williams's property as a danger to the community. He uses words like blight and deterioration and public interest, and he never once looks at the elderly woman sitting in the gallery, the woman whose home he is trying to steal. Rosetta Williams does not have a lawyer. She cannot afford one, and the ones who might work pro bono are tied up in other cases. She is representing herself, which means Amara's mother has coached her on procedure, on how to address the court, on what she can and cannot say. When it is Rosetta's turn to speak, she stands slowly. Her knees are not what they used to be, and the walk to the front of the courtroom takes longer than it should. But she walks with dignity. She walks with the posture of a woman who has faced down worse than this and survived. She says, "Your Honor, I have lived in my home for 51 years. She says, I raised my children there. I buried my husband from there. I have maintained that property with my own hands and my own money, and there is nothing wrong with it." The judge looks at her. He looks at her the way people have been looking at her for 73 years. The way they looked at her when she was a young nurse fighting for respect in a hospital that did not want her. The way they looked at her when she was a mother fighting for her children's education in a school system that had written them off. He says, "Mrs. Williams, the city has documented multiple code violations on your property." He says, "Do you have evidence to refute these claims?" Rosetta says, "I do, and so does my granddaughter." Amara approaches the witness box. Her heart is pounding so hard she can feel it in her throat, but her steps are steady and her face is calm. She has practiced this moment 100 times in her mind. She has rehearsed what she will say and how she will say it. She has prepared for every objection, every dismissal, every attempt to silence her. She carries the folder with her evidence, and she places it on the small shelf in front of her, and she looks at Judge Hartley, and she waits. The judge frowns. He says, "You are the granddaughter." Amara says, "Yes, Your Honor." He looks at her. His eyes move from her face to her dress, to her hands to the folder in front of her. He is assessing her the way he assessed her grandmother, looking for weakness, looking for a reason to dismiss. He says, "How old are you?" Amara says, 15. The judge's frown deepens. He says, "Miss Williams, this is a legal proceeding. We do not typically take testimony from minors in civil matters." Amara says, "Your Honor, I have evidence that is directly relevant to this case. Evidence that proves the violations cited against my grandmother's property are fabricated." The lawyer for Whitfield Development is on his feet. He says, "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The child is not a party to this case. She has no standing to present evidence." Judge Hartley nods. He seems relieved to have a procedural reason to exclude her. He says, "I am inclined to agree. Miss Williams, please return to the gallery." Amara does not move. She says, "Your Honor, with respect, I believe you should see what I have before you make that decision." The judge's expression hardens. He says, "Oh, Miss Williams, I am not going to ask you again." Amara feels the weight of the moment. She knows that if she backs down now, if she returns to the gallery without presenting her evidence, her grandmother will lose. The judge will rule in favor of Whitfield Development. The property will be seized. 51 years of history, 51 years of family, 51 years of community will be erased. She says, Your Honor, I have recordings of Harrison Whitfield III discussing how to pressure residents in Carver Heights into selling their homes. I have recordings of City Council member Robert Patterson explaining how to fabricate building code violations. I have documentation that proves a pattern of predatory behavior by Whitfield Development Corporation across multiple states. The courtroom goes very quiet. The lawyer for Whitfield Development has frozen in place. Harrison Whitfield III, who has been sitting in the gallery watching with an expression of mild amusement, is no longer amused. His face has gone pale. His hands have tightened on the arms of his chair. Judge Hartley stares at Amara. His expression has shifted from annoyance to something else, something harder to read. He says, Those are serious allegations. Amara says, I know, Your Honor. That is why I have proof. She opens the folder. She pulls out the first document, a transcript of one of Derek Simmons's recordings. She says, May I approach, Your Honor? The judge hesitates. He looks at the lawyer for Whitfield Development, who seems to be struggling to formulate an objection. He looks at Harrison Whitfield III, whose composure has cracked. He looks at Amara Williams, 15 years old, standing in his courtroom, with evidence that could change everything. He says, Proceed. The next 47 minutes are the most important of Amara Williams's life. She presents the transcripts one by one, explaining the context, identifying the speakers, highlighting the most damning statements. She plays excerpts of the recordings on her phone, the audio tinny but clear enough to understand. She shows the pattern of violations that Whitfield Development has used in other cities, the lawsuits, the displaced families, the systematic destruction of communities. The lawyer for Whitfield Development objects repeatedly. His objections become more frantic as the evidence accumulates, as the pattern becomes undeniable, as the judge's expression shifts from skepticism to concern to something that looks almost like anger. He objects on grounds of hearsay. Amara explains that the recordings are admissible as statements by party opponents. He objects on grounds of chain of custody. Amara produces documentation showing how Derek Simmons obtained the recordings and how they have been preserved. He objects on grounds of relevance. Judge Hartley overrules him. The relevance by this point is obvious. Harrison Whitfield III leaves the courtroom halfway through. He does not excuse himself. He does not ask permission. He simply stands and walks out, his face gray, his movements jerky. His lawyer watches him go with the expression of someone who knows he has lost. Amara finishes her presentation. She has not said everything she could say. She has not played every recording or shown every document. But she has said enough. She has shown enough. She has cracked open the machinery of corruption and let the light in. Judge Hartley is silent for a long moment. The courtroom waits. Rosetta Williams sits in the gallery with her hands clasped in her lap and her eyes fixed on her granddaughter. And there are tears on her cheeks, tears of pride and fear and hope. The judge says, Miss Williams. Amara looks at him. He says, In my 23 years on the bench, I have never seen anything like this. He pauses. He clears his throat. He says, I am dismissing the case against your grandmother's property. All claims of code violations are hereby vacated. He pauses again. He looks at Amara with an expression she cannot quite read. He says, And I am referring this matter to the State Attorney General for investigation. The evidence you have presented suggests criminal conduct that is beyond the jurisdiction of this court. Amara nods. She says, "Thank you, Your Honor." She does not smile. She does not celebrate. She is 15 years old, and she has just faced down a corrupt system and won. And she knows that this is only the beginning. She knows that Harrison Whitfield III has lawyers and money and connections, that the investigation will be long and complex, that there are no guarantees of justice. But she also knows that she has done something that matters. She has taken the truth and made it impossible to ignore. She has stood in a room full of people who expected her to fail, and she has refused to fail. She walks back to the gallery. Her grandmother reaches for her hand. Her mother is crying. Her father is standing very still, his face a mask of emotions too complex to name. Amara sits down. She takes her grandmother's hand. She lets the relief wash over her, just for a moment, just long enough to breathe. Then she begins to think about what comes next. The investigation takes 14 months. It is led by a special prosecutor appointed by the State Attorney General, a woman named Victoria Chen, who has built her career on taking down corrupt officials and fraudulent developers. She is methodical and relentless, and she follows the evidence wherever it leads. The evidence leads to Harrison Whitfield III. It leads to Robert Patterson. It leads to a network of corruption that stretches across City Hall and into the police department and touches every corner of local government. 31 people are ultimately indicted. Harrison Whitfield III is charged with conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. His bail is set at $5 million. He pays it, but he is required to surrender his passport and wear an ankle monitor. The man who once shook hands with governors and senators now lives under house arrest in a mansion that suddenly feels very much like a prison. Robert Patterson resigns from the city council 2 weeks after the investigation begins. He is later charged with bribery, conspiracy, and abuse of office. His trial is scheduled for next spring. Several city inspectors are charged with falsifying documents. Several police officers are charged with intimidation and harassment. The web of corruption is so extensive that new charges are added regularly, each revelation leading to another, each thread pulling loose another piece of the rotten fabric. Carver Heights is saved. The predatory acquisition program is dismantled. The families who were targeted, who received threatening letters and fabricated violations, are able to stay in their homes. Property values stabilize. The community that was marked for destruction begins to heal. But there is another story unfolding alongside the legal one. It is the story of a 15-year-old girl who stood up when no one else would. It is a story that spreads first through local news, then through national news, then through social media, where it is shared and reshared until it has been seen by millions of people. Amara Williams becomes famous. This is not what she wanted. She wanted to save her grandmother's home. She wanted to protect her community. She wanted to do the right thing because the right thing needed to be done. She did not want interviews and magazine covers and speaking invitations and college recruitment letters from institutions she has never heard of. But the fame comes anyway, because the world is hungry for stories like hers, for proof that courage can matter, that young people can make a difference, that the systems that seem so impervious to change can be broken open by someone who refuses to accept injustice. She handles it the way she handles everything, with grace, with dignity, with a quiet refusal to be anything other than who she is. The trial of Harrison Whitfield III takes place in a federal courthouse, before a judge who has no connections to Robert Patterson, before a jury that has been carefully screened for bias. Amara is called as a witness. She is 17 now. The 2 years older than she was when she first stood in a courtroom and presented evidence that changed everything. She has grown taller. She has changed her hair. She has applied to colleges, written essays, navigated the strange world of standardized tests and recommendation letters and application deadlines. But in some essential way, she is the same person she was at 15. She still has her grandmother's stubbornness. She still has her father's analytical mind. She still has her mother's refusal to accept injustice. The defense attorney for Harrison Whitfield III tries to discredit her. He questions her methodology. He questions her sources. He questions her motives. He suggests that she is a pawn of larger interests, that she was manipulated by adults who wanted to take down a successful businessman, that her evidence was planted or fabricated or somehow obtained illegally. Amara answers every question calmly. She explains her research process. She documents her chain of custody. She describes in detail how she found each piece of evidence and what it means. She does not get angry. She does not get defensive. She presents the truth and lets it speak for itself. The jury deliberates for 4 days. On the 5th day, they return with a verdict: guilty on all counts. Harrison Whitfield III is sentenced to 23 years in federal prison. He is 67 years old. He will likely die behind bars. Amara watches the sentencing from the gallery. She watches the man who tried to steal her grandmother's home, the man who destroyed communities across 4 states, the man who thought he was above consequence. She watches him stand to receive his sentence, watches his face as the number 23 registers, watches the moment when he finally understands that his money and his power and his connections could not protect him from the truth. She does not feel satisfaction. She does not feel triumph. She feels tired. She feels the weight of 3 years of fighting, 3 years of testimony and depositions and legal proceedings, 3 years of being the face of a battle that should never have been necessary. She stands. She leaves the courtroom. Her grandmother is waiting in the hallway, 84 years old now, still living in the same house, still tending the same garden, still holding on to the life she built with stubborn determination and absolute refusal to yield. They embrace. They do not speak. There are no words for moments like this, no language adequate to capture what it means to fight and win against forces that seemed unconquerable. They hold each other, and they breathe, and they let the weight of it settle into their bones. 3 months after the sentencing, Amara Williams delivers the commencement address at her high school graduation. She stands at a podium before 600 of her classmates and their families, and she speaks about the things she has learned. She says, "I was 15 years old when I decided to fight." She says, "I did not know if I could win. I did not know if anyone would listen. I did not know if my voice could possibly matter against the money and power of people who had been getting away with injustice for decades." She pauses. She looks out at the faces watching her. She sees her grandmother in the front row, wiping her eyes. She sees Derek Simmons, the man who trusted her with his evidence, sitting a few rows back. She sees teachers who believed in her, and classmates who supported her, and strangers who came because they heard her story and wanted to see her with their own eyes. She says, "I learned that the systems we build are only as good as the people who maintain them. I learned that corruption thrives in silence and dies in sunlight. I learned that the truth is the most powerful weapon any of us can wield if we have the courage to wield it." She pauses again. She says, "But I also learned something else, something harder. I learned that justice is not a destination. It is not a place you arrive at and then stop. Justice is a practice. It is a daily choice. It is the decision over and over to see injustice and refuse to look away. She says, "The fight I started when I was 15 is not over. It will never be over. Because somewhere right now, there is another community being targeted, another family being threatened, another person being told that they do not matter, that they do not belong, that their voice is not worth hearing." She says, "Our job is not to wait for someone else to fight. Our job is to be the ones who fight, to be the ones who gather evidence and demand accountability and refuse to accept that the way things are is the way things have to be." She looks directly at the audience. She says, "I am not special. I am not uniquely brave or uniquely smart or uniquely capable. I am a person who saw something wrong and decided to do something about it. That is all. And every single one of you can do the same thing. Every single one of you can choose to be the person who speaks up, who shows up, who refuses to be silenced." The applause begins slowly and builds to something thunderous. Amara stands at the podium and lets it wash over her, and she thinks about her grandmother's house, still standing, still full of memories, still home. She thinks about the families in Carver Heights who are still living in their homes because a 15-year-old girl decided to fight. She thinks about the ripples that spread from single stones thrown into still water, widening and widening until they touch shores that the thrower never imagined. She steps away from the podium. She walks back to her seat. She is 18 years old, and she is going to college in the fall, and she has the rest of her life ahead of her. She does not know what the future holds. She does not know what battles she will fight or what injustices she will confront. But she knows who she is. She knows what she is capable of. And she knows that she will never, ever stop. Have you ever been told that your voice does not matter? Have you ever been dismissed because of your age or your appearance, or the neighborhood you come from, or the color of your skin? Have you ever looked at injustice and felt powerless to stop it? Felt like the systems arrayed against you were too massive and too entrenched and too indifferent to be moved by anything you could do? This is not just Amara Williams' story. This is the story of every young person who has ever been underestimated, every community that has been targeted by the powerful, every family that has had to fight for what should have been theirs by right. It is a story that repeats itself in different forms, in different places, with different names and different faces. But it is fundamentally the same story. It is the story of what happens when ordinary people refuse to accept that the way things are is the way things have to be. Amara Williams was 15 years old. She had no law degree. She had no political connections. She had no money and no power, and no obvious standing to challenge a corporation worth hundreds of millions of dollars. What she had was a grandmother she loved, a community she wanted to protect, a stubborn refusal to be silent in the face of wrong. And she had the understanding that evidence matters, that documentation matters, that the truth, carefully gathered and clearly presented, is a weapon that the corrupt cannot defeat no matter how much money they throw at it. She took notes. She recorded conversations. She built files and timelines and chains of evidence. She did the unglamorous work of justice, the work that happens not in courtrooms but in bedrooms and basements and libraries, the work of finding out what is true and proving it beyond the possibility of denial. And when the moment came, when she stood before a judge who had already decided she did not matter, she had something more powerful than his assumptions. She had the truth. That is the lesson of Amara Williams' story. Not that justice always prevails, not that the good guys always win, but that the fight is always worth fighting, that silence is always the wrong choice, that every single one of us has the capacity to gather evidence and demand accountability and refuse to let the powerful operate in darkness. The next time you see something wrong, do not look away. Do not assume someone else will handle it. Do not tell yourself that you are too young or too old or too poor or too powerless to make a difference. Open your eyes, take notes, ask questions, build your case. And when the moment comes, when you stand before whatever authority is trying to silence you, when they tell you that your voice does not matter, pull out your evidence. Show them the truth. Make them see what they have been refusing to see. That is how we change the world. That is how we honor the Amara Williamses who came before us and paved the way for the ones who will come after. One voice at a time. One truth at a time. One refusal to be silent at a time. Until the silence is broken so completely that it can never be rebuilt. Rosetta Williams is still living in her home. She is 85 years old now. Her knees are worse. Her garden is smaller. But she is still there, in the house where she raised her children and buried her husband and watched her granddaughter become someone the world could not ignore. She sits on her porch in the evenings and watches the sun set over Carver Heights, and she thinks about what was almost lost and what was saved. And sometimes Amara comes to visit. They sit together on that porch, the old woman and the young woman who saved her home, and they watch the light change. And they do not need to say anything at all. They have already said everything that matters. They have already done what needed to be done. And the house still stands,